So I'm just going to go through some ways to use Google Sketchup, which is a free modelling program by Google. So this is kind of a basic introduction, and we're going to look at how to use the program to make digital exhibition layouts or room layouts, 3D forms, so objects like furniture, and then also how to put existing images like 2D wall-based works into the model. So when you open the program, it might give you the option to select a template. If it doesn't, you can go to File, Sketchup, Preferences, and then you have a list of options, but if you click on Template, it will give you several different options to choose from. Some have a kind of sky and grass feature, and some have kind of no background features. So I'm going to go for the construction documentation in millimeters. And when you open the model, you should have a figure just to give you a rough dimension of scale. You don't have to keep it, but sometimes it's useful. So I'm going to keep him there for the moment. One of the other things you can do if you're just starting to use the program, if you go to Window and then to Instructor, which is here, it opens a kind of window on the side which gives you a bit of information about all of the tools which are in the top bar here that you're using. So if I go to this one, it tells you kind of what it can be used for. So this can be quite useful when you're kind of not sure what these things do. I'm going to click this off for the moment though. So one of the easiest ways to make layouts on SketchUp is you can use two things. So you can either use this, the line or the draw tool, or this one, this one, to create rectangles. So these are the axis points, the blue, the green and the red. And one of the good things about SketchUp is when you kind of go near one of the axis points, it will snap to it. So I'm going to start from the origin. So if I do this, I can kind of create a rough dimension for the ground of the space. And if you see here in the bottom right hand corner, it will give you dimensions. You can edit this. So this is about 5 meters by 4. If I switch that, I can edit it here to say 6 meters by 4 meters. And you can see the rectangle will shift to those exact dimensions. So the other thing that you can do with SketchUp is to extrude, so to give this a bit of depth. So if you click on this tool at the top and click on the surface you want to extrude, if you click, you can drag it up or down. And again, if you start typing, the dimensions will appear in the bottom right hand corner box. So I could switch this to something like 400 millimeters, and it will just, and press enter, and it will create that thickness. For the walls of the space, we can use the draw tool. So if you go towards a corner, it will kind of snap to the endpoint. And if you click and then draw up, so say I wanted the walls to be 2 meters high, I can also type 2 meters and then press enter, and it will adjust to it. If you then want to escape, you can just press exit on that, or click to the select tool. So if I start on that point and then drop, I know I'm on the blue axis. I can put that dimension in again, so 2 meters, and then come across, and it will create a surface. I can do it with this one as well, just to create. If you see that, it aligns on the green axis, so I know it's parallel to that point. So if I click, I can draw it across, and I know that those are connecting. These are also the tools that you can use to navigate the diagram. This, if you click on it, means that you can rotate around it. This means that you can shift the area of focus within the image. And if you click this one, the magnifying glass with the arrows, zoom extents, it will take you to just view all of the objects within the Sketchup file. But I think maybe that's too close. So if I press zoom, click on my mouse and then drag the cursor in and out, you can zoom around the diagram. So I'm just going to play around with this until I feel like it's feels like a good layout. So I'm going to reduce the size of the floor and maybe give the walls a slight dimension to them. The other thing you can do if you're creating a space is to copy and paste the walls. So I could select, I'm going to move the character for the moment. So if I click on this, the arrows in the 4 directions move, I can click on the figure and move him outside of the diagram. If I want to copy and paste this wall, I can select the surface, but maybe if I go this way, using the arrow and then selecting this wall and maybe deselecting. So if you press shift, I can deselect that tiny bit at the bottom and also see the other parts I've selected. So if you press shift, hold shift down while you're on select, you can deselect certain areas and also surfaces. So yeah, that looks fine. I'm just going to deselect this tiny bit here as well. And maybe draw a back on this. So if these two are connected, then this is a whole surface and that closes. So I'm going to reselect, press shift and add that to the selection. And then if I spin this round, I can press Command C, I'm just going to zoom out, and then Command V. So you have this identical wall just on the other part of the diagram. If I move across and maybe spin this round, I can use my move tool to select the corner of the wall or the end point, but maybe let's put it on actually the other side, it makes more sense. So I can select it and move it to that corner so it's in line and parallel. If you're creating a space and maybe you want different viewpoints, the other thing you can do is make the wall translucent. So either you could grab the top of it and pull it down so that it's just a kind of partial view. I'm just going to undo that. So Command Z. Or you could, on the paint bucket tool here, it will bring up the toolbar with lots of different colours. So you can select using this wheel here, clicking on this icon and dragging it around, also moving this depending on how light or dark you want it. Or you can use this pipette tool, which I've always found quite useful because even if you have images on your desktop screen alongside SketchUp, so if I just click on moving that across and then the pipette and select that colour, it's automatically in my palette. You can also drag it into one of these to save it. So just to show you how to make a wall translucent, say if I click a kind of blue and turn it, move the opacity down to 15%, and then using the paint bucket, click on this wall, it will kind of show you what's on the other side. You can play around with this, so saying if you don't want it as translucent, you can move it up towards the 100%. But I think for now, while I'm doing this, I'm going to get rid of this wall and try and create a stone effect on the floor. So I'm just going to use this erase tool here, and then if you click and you drag it on things, on lines or surfaces, it will select them. It shows it selected it when it's blue, and then it will just delete it. So I'm going to erase these. And then to put a texture on the floor, I'm going to import one from an image I've downloaded from the internet. So if I go to File, Import, I've saved it under terrazzo. I'm going to import it as a texture. Press import. If you move it around, it will kind of snap to different surfaces. I want it on the floor, so I'm just going to move it to the endpoint without clicking. Wait till it's there. Click once, and then drag it along to the other endpoint. And when I click again, it will stay there as a kind of textured surface. I can do this on the other sides too. So if I do it again, File, Import as images texture, terrazzo, import. I can do it on these side surfaces as well. One of the other things that is quite useful, so say if you have been playing around in SketchUp and you like visually how big something is, but you don't really know what the dimensions are, there's this tape measure tool here. So you can click directly on that, or you can go to Tools, Dimensions. And so if you wanted to know the dimensions of that, if you hover over it and it turns blue, if you click, it will bring out the dimensions. The other way of doing that is also, so you can leave it like that and then just click and delete. If you want to erase the dimensions, you can also do that. If I go back to dimensions, is to start on one side, so the endpoint, click, and then draw it to another endpoint, and then drag it out. So I'm just going to erase those. If you're trying to find, if you're trying to find an angle, there's also a protractor tool. So I'm just going to make a kind of arbitrary shape on the surface. So align up and maybe align to the angle, press enter. And then if I go to Tools, Protractor, and I want to know the distance between what that angle is, I can select the endpoint here. Oh, sorry, other way around. If I start at the center, so click the center and then click one edge, and then you draw it round to the other side, and then you'll see the angle is in this, the bottom right hand corner is 101 degrees. So for now, I don't really need those axis points. I'm going to get rid of that, and also this line. And then show you how to create some objects to fit into this space. I'm going to click on the rectangle tool, drag it after I want it. So click, and then maybe that's the length of one of the legs. I'm just going to draw it across. I'm going to zoom in just so it's a bit more visible. So maybe quite something like that. Also, if I select that shape, I can go Command C and Command V. Actually, and if I want it, if I drag it to here, it will snap. So you'll see this red axis point. I know that that's parallel, so I'm going to drag that to there. Maybe for my table legs, I might think of something brown and translucent, maybe a glass table, so I can colour those in. And also using Extrude, I can click on this tool and drag that surface up, and maybe to that, but maybe to see how far I want it. And if you click on a surface that you want it to be parallel with, so this will go to the same endpoint or to the surface parallel to the other leg, you can also do that. So to create a rectangular tabletop, I'm just going to really create another rectangle along the shape. So using the line tool, just draw until it's parallel, or even if I just do two lines until they're parallel and then do that. I can also copy that to the other side, so click on the surface, Command C and Command V. Sometimes I place the objects just in space so I can get a better move point on it. So I click to move and then select the endpoint that I want to line up with the other object. So I can drag it to there. And I can also kind of close that shape by creating a line across. So say I want this to be, I don't know, 3 centimeters thick. I can bring this line up to the blue axis and then type in 3 centimeters and then press enter. Do the same on the other side, drag this up until it's in line with the blue axis, press 3 centimeters or type it in, press enter, and then align those things. So I can also extrude this surface across. So I can click on here. I might need to zoom in a bit more. On this grey surface, press this extrude or push pull, and then just bring it across until it's aligned with the endpoint. And if I also want that translucent, so maybe to look like a glass table, I can just use the paint bucket tool in the same way that I've used the other ones. So click to kind of blue and then change the opacity level and then just create that on each of the surfaces. And I want to make a kind of light, freestanding light for the space. So you can also, you don't have to be tied to angular shapes. You can also create circular or curved ones. So just so it's on the face, so on the floor of this space, if I click, I can then drag the tool as far close as I want to create the kind of the circle and the width of the circle. So I'm thinking maybe for the base of this light, I want something about that size. I'm going to zoom in just so it's a bit easier to see. You can also do furniture or objects in different Sketchup files and then just copy and paste them in if you find working in one kind of diagram is a bit distracting. If I do this again, it will automatically snap to the center. And maybe the middle internal part of the lamp I want to be that size. So I'm just going to zoom out again. Also, if you extrude based on a texture, it should bring the whole texture up, which is quite strange, but I'm going to change the color in a bit. This is just kind of for the shape now. So yeah, making quite a strange freestanding light, but yeah, maybe for the base of it, I want something quite pastel, and maybe the light itself will be kind of a yellow. And maybe stick with this kind of pastel theme that's going on. Or maybe something a bit more, yeah, maybe pink is a bit nicer. So yeah, you can kind of make curved forms based on that. Equally, you can drag it down to have a kind of concave shape, but it just depends, yeah, depends how you want to use it. So I'm also going to make a chair for the space. It might be easier to do this out of this main diagram, and then I can also show you how to use things to adjust the scale. So if I go into this kind of clearer bit of space here just by moving it across, sometimes it's easier to make things in profile and then extrude them across. So if I make sure I'm in line with the blue axis, the green axis, and then have something that is also with the green and in line with blue, I can then rotate round. So I'm kind of working in that profile. So to make a chair shape, I don't know, could start with a kind of a rectangular profile. So have something like this. But also maybe it's interesting to have a kind of curve on it. So this tool here, you can create a 2-point arc or an arc between 2 points. I think I'm going to go arc between 2 points and start from here and go for there. I know, go to maybe the 2-point arc, sorry. So start from here and go to there, and then bring this out very slightly so there's a slight curve on it. I don't need these kind of boundary lines. I just find sometimes it's easier to make shapes within a kind of fixed geometry. So if I delete all those, and I don't know, maybe have a kind of brown colour for my chair, I can click Extrude and then just draw this along. So I might need to refill that in. I can also put, you can also, if there's different areas, you can colour different parts. I think I might have a kind of stripe on the centre bit. And to put some legs on it, if I move the diagram here and zoom in, and then just rotate this round, I can, the diagram, if you hover around different points, it will snap to the midpoint, which is quite useful. So sometimes I just kind of make grids on different objects to find center points. And if I do that enough, hopefully I'll get to the 4 corner parts of the chair. So these parts essentially. So again, going back to the circle tool, I can go to the center, and if I zoom in, it will allow me to make a kind of smaller curve. Rather than trying to replicate that, I can just select, you can click and drag, so I can select that with the 4 points in it. If I go Command C and Command V, I can just drop that at another point in the diagram, and then if I click on the center, I can drag that and it should click to the other cross points on the chair. So I'm going to delete all these lines which I really don't need. And now I'm going to, just using the push-pull tool again, just going to rotate this round slightly to see how long I want the legs. Just pull these down, but equally I could write 40 centimeters and then go to that length. Just looking at this, maybe it's a bit too long, so I'm just going to undo that and then just drag it based on what I think looks right by eye. Again, I can do this with the others and just align it with the one that I've already done so that they're equal. And then just zoom around, might give them kind of grey colour. And then I'm happy with that, and I can drop it in the space. So it might not be the right dimensions, but let's see. So if I just select the object, press move, I'm going to select on the end point on the bottom so I can make sure that the feet are on the face. So this says that they, does it say that on the face? Should be. If we move around we can see. Going to move it again so it's just a bit more behind the table. So it does kind of look about right, but we can definitely edit that. So if you want something to be a bit bigger or a bit smaller, I mean maybe for the man over there it's a tiny bit small, you can select this tool, which is scale. So I'm going to unclick the object just to show you again. So you can drag, press the select tool, drag it over the object so everything is in the selection, press scale. So based on these bounding boxes, if you click a diagonal, the scale remains, you pull the shape and it's equal from all sides. I'm just gonna, if I pull on one of these, so this centerpiece here, it can create a much longer form, but it can also align with the other thing. So say I had a chair and I wanted to make a bench, I can switch that round. I can also click the scale on again, and I can pull that and just align it so that it's aligned with the table. What I'm going to show you how to do is to import an image. So it could be like a scan of a drawing, it could be any sort of JPEG, an image of painting, but that you want to drop into this kind of virtual space. So I'm just going to zoom in. For the sake of this, I'm going to say it's use a drawing I have, and I know it's A5, but if we scale it up, we can do something that's A3. So I'm going to type in the dimensions. So I guess the width would be 297 by 420, and just do 297 again. I'm also just going to extrude it to give it a tiny bit of depth. And it's the same principle with the terrazzo floor. So I go File, Import, just this drawing as a texture, import, and then just snap it to the endpoint and drag it across. If you want to make a frame for something like that, you can just draw a kind of space around it. So if I zoom in and then just go to the back wall and maybe have it something like 5 centimeters, it's quite big. Just delete that and do something smaller. Maybe 3 centimeters on each side. You can also select that, hopefully copy and paste it, so V, and then just align that to the base side. And then again with this, 3 centimeters. I'm just going to delete the connecting points and then copy that shape and paste it on the other side. So select, copy that one, Command C, Command V. I can drop it there, and then if I click, it lets my mouse move around, but I can click back on it because it's still selected and then move that endpoint to there. So if I delete these sides, so it's kind of all one surface, I can then go back to my push and pull and just extrude this either to match that or even make it a boxier frame and just pull it a bit further out. So I could use that frame as a template and drop in other images. I can also copy and paste it so it's in line, and then just draw it so it doesn't. Sometimes also, if it's doing things like that and playing up, you can make a sacrificial line. So I could draw a line across here if I knew the dimensional gap I wanted between the framed images. So say I wanted that to be 6 centimeters, just type that in. And then I could copy this, Command C, Command V. And if I clicked that line, I'll just move it so it's upright. I can select that corner and then bring it here. And then it's also easier to move along that axis as well. And you can delete this line afterwards. Finally, if you want to take screen grabs of the models you've been working on, and you're kind of distracted by all of this, the axis around, firstly you can delete the figure, but if you want to get rid of these kind of red, green and blue lines. If you go to view, you can just turn off access and they kind of go away. So yeah, thanks.